never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Find another.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a hump day Wednesday, so of course that means it's time for another weekly top 10 countdown. Before I get into it though, let me first say that if you have any thoughts on the new college football playoff poll, please feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comments section. I'll discuss them later on this week when we preview all the big games in the world of college football coming up this weekend. And last Thursday, I was on a podcast with my man Jay Jacobs, and we talked indie wrestling and professional wrestling. I'm going to be on his podcast again tomorrow, and I think this time we're going to talk wrestling and football. So I encourage you to go download his podcast wherever it is you listen to your podcast, because I will be on there again tomorrow. But anyway, on to today's top 10 countdown, and I'm kind of excited about this one because it's different and it's unique. I did one kind of similar to this last year. I don't exactly recall when it was, but it was sometime last year where I did top 10 pet peeves of mine, and it was just anything in life that got on my nerves. Well, I'm doing something just like that in today's top 10 countdown, but today I'm talking top 10 pet peeves in the sports world. So we're going to be talking baseball, NASCAR, basketball, football. So if you have anything that bothers you and just irks your nerves in the world of sports, please feel free to let me know. And of course, everybody has different things that irritate them, and to you it's a big deal, but to other people it doesn't bother them, and they say that bothers you. But everybody gets annoyed by different stuff. So this is one of those things where you could ask anybody to give their top 10 pet peeves in the sports world, and almost everybody would have maybe not a completely different top 10, but at least 5 or 6 different ones, because what bothers me may not bother you, and vice versa. Number 10, in the world of Major League Baseball, stress pitches drives me absolutely crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, anybody with common sense, which there's not many folks nowadays that have common sense, but for those of us that do, obviously we know that a pitcher is under more stress if there's a runner on base as opposed to no runner being on base. But back in the 60s and 70s, pitchers still pitched 8 or 9 innings a start, and runners got on base. That's just Major League Baseball's way of trying to hide why starting pitchers only go 5 or 6 innings now, where in used to they would go 7, 8, or 9, and they call it stress pitches, because anytime a runner's on base, you're under more stress. Anytime you go to a 3-ball count, you're under more stress. Drives me crazy. I don't need you to tell me that. I know it's obvious that if there's a runner on base, he's under more stress. but I've seen pitchers many a times throw 140 pitches and be under stress the whole time. So it can be done. Number 9, in the world of NASCAR, just about every single time whoever the driver is wins a race, they get out for their post-race interview, and the first thing they say is, well, I can't say enough about my guys. That's bland. It's generic. Everybody says it. We know your guys worked hard. They set your car up all week long. We know that. Say something different. Have a post-race press conference where you actually have personality and not just say, well, I can't say enough about my guys, and then start naming all your sponsors. We know who your sponsors are. It's on the side of your race car. Number 8, you see this in really any collegiate sport, but it's more prominent in the world of college football, and that's fans holding up the number 1 sign. And yes, I actually mean the number 1 sign, not something vulgar and I'm trying to hide it. I'm actually talking about the number 1 sign. And we've all seen it, especially during bowl season. You're sitting back and you're watching, let's say, last year's Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl when South Carolina played North Carolina and the Gamecocks make a big play, and you see their fans in the stadium, they're going, we're number 1, we're number 1. No, you're not number 1. If you were number 1, you wouldn't be playing in the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl. That drives me absolutely crazy. Do something different. It's okay to like your team, but if you're 6-6 or 7-5, you're not number 1. So don't be holding up a number 1 sign just because your team made a big play in the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl. Number 7, this is something that supposedly the NBA's cut back on, but still drives me crazy. That is flopping. And flopping drives me crazy, especially when it's somebody like LeBron James. You're out there and you're 6'7", 270 pounds, and a guy half your size barely touches you, and you fall on the ground and slide 85 feet. Dude, that's a flop. Can't nobody half your size barely touch you and you hit the mat and roll that far. That's a bunch of hogwash. So flopping drives me absolutely crazy. There are some times where it's not that obvious, but to me, when it's that blatantly obvious, something more should be done about it. Also in the world of the NBA, number 6, admit you made the foul. I couldn't tell you how many times I'm watching an NBA game and you'll see a guy drive the lane and the defender reaches out and grabs his arm, and then when the ref calls him for a foul, he's like, what are you doing, ref? I didn't foul him. Dude, it's obvious you fouled him. You reached out and grabbed his arm as he walked by. You fouled him. Just admit you made the foul. We all saw it. Before we talk about the top 5, let's recap numbers 10 through 6. Number 10, stress pitches. Number 9, can't say enough about my guys. Number 8, stop holding up the number 1 sign. Number 7, flopping. And number 6, admit you made the foul. And this is Brandon Todd's 10 biggest pet peeves in the world of sports. I could have written down probably 50, but these are the 10 that irritate me the most. Number 5, and I actually referenced this in yesterday's video, and there was a reason why I did it. I was trying to give a hint as to what today's top 10 countdown was going to be about. But number 5 is, if I would have told you, and I said that in yesterday's video, and it happens all the time. Anytime a team ends up being really good or ends up being really bad, you'll hear a commentator say, well, if I would have told you back in August this is going to happen, you wouldn't have believed me. That's generic. If you want to prove a point, find something different to say. Everybody says that. It's not different. It's not unique. Everybody says it. Say something different. Number 4, and this is a stat that I think needs to be changed in the world of college football or the NFL. A blocked field goal ain't a miss. To me, a missed field goal is when you kick the ball up in the air and it goes to the left of the uprights or to the right of the uprights or hits the uprights or falls in front of the uprights. If your kick is blocked, yeah, you missed it, but you didn't miss it. It was blocked. There should be 2 different stats for kickers. One where you actually missed a kick and one where your kick was blocked. Because if it's blocked, we have no proof that you would have actually missed the kick. For all we know, it might have went in. Number 3 is also in the world of college football, and everybody says it, and it drives me absolutely up the wall, which is why most of the time I have the radio on in the background because I can't stand to hear it. And that is, no matter what college football game is on, after a team gets a first down or 2 first downs, you'll hear the announcer say, they're using up tempo, they're using no huddle. Duh. First of all, we're watching the game. Our eyes are not deceiving us. We see that they're using up tempo. Second of all, everybody does it, with the exception of Air Force, Army, and Navy, who all 3 still run the triple option. Every other program in college football uses the no huddle spread offense. We don't need you to tell us they're using up tempo. We can see it. Everybody does it. It's not different. It's not unique. Everybody does it. But if we're watching the game, obviously we can see. And if we can see, then we can see they're using up tempo. You ain't got to tell us. Number 2, stop acting like every big game is the game of the century. And you heard this earlier this year when Georgia played Tennessee. You also heard it when Tennessee played Alabama. But every single time there's a big game in the world of sports, whatever sport it is, they'll say, this could possibly be the game of the century. No, it's not. Only one game can be the game of the century. Every big-time game cannot be the game of the century. Only one game can be the game of the century. Otherwise, you have games of the century and not game of the century. It's okay to say it's the game of the year or the game of the week, but just because it's 2 high-profile teams playing each other does not mean it's the game of the century. And my number 1 pet peeve, and I've mentioned this numerous times, is stop blaming the referees. I mentioned in yesterday's video that my man Troy Nash Baxley has a Facebook section called College Sports Realm, and all it is college sports. And I don't know exactly how many folks are on there, but I know that I'm on there, so I get notified numerous times a day about, whatever the topic is, and I can talk any college sport. I can talk any major pro sport. But if you're such an idiot and you know as little about sports as you do, that you blame everything on the referees, I ain't talking to you. If there's a game that happens on Saturday and I get on Facebook and the first thing somebody does is blame the referees, I don't even respond because it's stupid. If you actually sit back and watch the game, then you see there's things that happen throughout that game to where if those things didn't happen, that supposed missed call by the official wouldn't have mattered. And I go back to the Kentucky Ole Miss game this year in the world of college football because that's the one that everybody gave the referees a hard time for about 3 weeks. And whether or not you agree with the call and it being a missed call didn't matter. Kentucky had a special teams touchdown earlier in the game, and a Kentucky player tackled his own teammate. That cost them 7 points. In the fourth quarter, they lined up from the 8-yard line, got a touchdown, but it was called back because of illegal formation, and you could watch the play, and it was illegal formation. That's 14 points that Kentucky cost themselves. If they don't cost themselves those 14 points, that missed call by the official, whether it's actually a missed call or not, doesn't matter, because instead of being down a few points, you're up by 2 scores. So all of a sudden, that one missed call doesn't mean a hill of beans. But it irks me and drives me crazy how these teams go out here and play a 3.5-hour football game, and you see players drop passes, you see players fumble, you see linemen miss blocks, you see quarterbacks make bad throws, you see kickers miss kicks, you see defensive players miss tackles, but then all of a sudden, that ref misses one call, and all those mistakes you saw, they didn't matter. If that ref hadn't missed that call, we'd have won that game. If you know so little about sports that the only argument you have is blame the refs, I'm not talking to you. Because if you know anything at all about the sport, then you know what happened in that game means more than that one missed call that referee made, and that drives me absolutely up the wall. So those are my 10 biggest pet peeves in the world of sports. Any thoughts on it, please feel free to let me know. Anything that bothers you in the world of sports, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What did the two pieces of bread say on their wedding day? It was loaf at first sight. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.